9 Golden Age actors who ruined their careers and lost everything. The golden light of Hollywood stardom can illuminate with blinding intensity and vanish just as suddenly, leaving darkness and ruin in its wake. For every success story from cinema's golden age, there's a cautionary tale of spectacular collapse. Careers that didn't gradually fade, but imploded dramatically, leaving behind the wreckage of wasted talent, squandered fortunes, and shattered lives. Hollywood has always been a factory that manufactures dreams, explained a veteran studio executive who witnessed several of these downfalls firsthand. But what people forget is that it's equally efficient at manufacturing nightmares for those who can't navigate its treacherous waters. What makes these particular stories so compelling isn't just the height from which these stars fell, though many commanded salaries equivalent to millions in today's dollars, but the speed and totality of their destruction. These weren't careers that simply cooled, they were reputations that combusted, bank accounts that evaporated, and lives that unraveled in full public view. The studio system could build you up higher than anyone had ever climbed, noted a film historian specializing in Hollywood's golden age. But if you crossed the wrong people, violated the wrong moral codes, or simply lost control of your personal demons, that same system could destroy you with terrifying efficiency. Most shocking are the financial realities behind these falls. Stars who once commanded thousands per week died penniless. Actors whose names topped marquees finished their lives in obscurity, sometimes working under assumed names just to survive. And several met ends so tragic, they became cautionary legends in an industry already rife with superstition. What's particularly heartbreaking is how many were victims of systems beyond their control, observed a biographer who has chronicled several of these fallen stars. Some were destroyed by studio-fostered addictions, others by impossible moral standards they could never hope to satisfy, and still others by their own inability to handle fame that came too fast and burned too bright. Today, we're exploring 9 of the most dramatic career implosions from Hollywood's golden age. From the silent film superstar who went from commanding $1 million per year to working under a pseudonym after a scandal destroyed his reputation, to the actress whose tragic end at the Hollywood sign created one of the industry's most enduring legends. But we begin with the story that established the template for all Hollywood scandals that followed, a case that demonstrated just how quickly public adoration could transform into merciless destruction. Fatty Arbuckle, the first star to fall. In 1921, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was cinema's highest-paid star, having just signed a contract with Paramount for $1 million annually, equivalent to over $14 million today. His gentle athletic comedy had made him one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood, a mentor to Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, and a true pioneer of film comedy. 3 days in September of that year would destroy everything he had built. From $3 million a year to working under a fake name, remarked a film historian who studied Arbuckle's case extensively. No Hollywood fall has ever been more complete or more unjust. The catalyst was a wild Labor Day party at San Francisco's St. Francis Hotel, where a young actress named Virginia Rapp became seriously ill and died days later of peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder. Though medical evidence suggested a pre-existing condition, moral crusaders and yellow journalists quickly constructed a lurid narrative. Arbuckle had allegedly crushed the young woman beneath his considerable weight during a sexual assault. The headlines were immediate and devastating. William Randolph Hearst's newspaper empire discovered that Arbuckle stories increased circulation, leading to increasingly sensationalized coverage. Facts became irrelevant in the rush to judgment. They claimed he violated her with a Coca-Cola bottle, that he crushed her under his enormous weight, none of which was supported by any evidence, explained the historian. But moral crusaders had been looking for a way to attack Hollywood, and Arbuckle became their perfect target. Arbuckle endured 3 trials. The first 2 ended with hung juries, and the third resulted in a complete acquittal after the jury deliberated for just 6 minutes. They even took the extraordinary step of issuing a formal apology. Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel a great injustice has been done him. There was not the slightest proof adduced to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. But the legal victory came too late. The newly appointed head of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, Will Hayes, had already banned Arbuckle's films and his name from American screens. Though Hayes eventually lifted the ban, theater owners refused to show Arbuckle's work, fearing public backlash. He was the first victim of what we'd now call cancel culture, noted an entertainment lawyer who studied the case's legal implications. Arbuckle was completely innocent, but the industry sacrificed him to protect itself from moral reformers who were threatening government censorship of all films. The financial impact was immediate and catastrophic. Paramount was forced to shelve films worth millions. Arbuckle's career earnings evaporated in legal fees and living expenses. By the mid-1920s, he was effectively bankrupt despite having been one of the wealthiest entertainers in America just years earlier. Desperate to work, Arbuckle began directing under the pseudonym William Goodrich. His talent still valuable, but his name toxic. Friends like Buster Keaton tried to help, but the industry that had made Arbuckle wealthy had permanently turned against him. He experienced a brief comeback in 1933 when Warner Brothers signed him to make comedy shorts, potentially presaging a full return to the screen. The night after signing this contract, Arbuckle died of a heart attack in his sleep. He was 46 years old. His last words to his wife were, "This is the best day of my life," said the historian. After a decade of being treated as a pariah, he finally thought he was being welcomed back, only to die before his redemption could begin. Arbuckle's destruction established a pattern that would repeat throughout Hollywood history, a moral panic, amplified by yellow journalism, leading to the complete annihilation of a career regardless of facts or legal outcomes. But while Arbuckle's downfall came from external forces, our next subject's destruction came primarily from within, fueled by a studio system that valued profit over human welfare.
It really was no miracle. What happened was just this. The wind began to switch, the house to pitch. Next year, our troubles will be miles away.
Judy Garland, the star who couldn't escape the system. When 13-year-old Frances Gumm, soon to be renamed Judy Garland, signed with MGM in 1935, she entered a system that would simultaneously make her one of the world's most beloved performers and systematically destroy her health, stability, and financial security. She couldn't escape the system, or the pills it gave her, observed a biographer who chronicled Garland's tragic trajectory. MGM created Judy Garland the star, but in the process, it broke Judy Garland the person. The studio's treatment of the young performer set the stage for decades of struggle. Concerned about her weight, executives put the teenager on a regimen of diet pills, amphetamines to suppress her appetite during the day, and barbiturates to help her sleep at night. This studio-mandated introduction to pharmaceuticals began a lifelong pattern of substance dependency. They were literally giving speed to a child, explained the biographer, and not occasionally, daily, for years, during critical developmental periods. The studio doctors prescribed it, studio executives enforced it, and her own mother collaborated with the system. She never had a chance. By the time Garland starred in The Wizard of Oz at 16, she was already dependent on the uppers and downers cycle that would plague her for life. The studio worked her relentlessly, often filming one project during the day while rehearsing another at night, with pills provided to manage her energy levels during punishing 18-hour workdays. As Garland matured, her relationship with MGM deteriorated. Increasingly unreliable on set due to her addiction issues, she began missing days of shooting. Productions ran over budget. Her behavior became erratic, a direct consequence of the very substances the studio had introduced to her system. In 1950, MGM finally terminated her contract after she had worked for them for 15 years, a decision that devastated Garland both emotionally and financially. Though she had made the studio millions, years of financial mismanagement and contractual disadvantages left her with serious tax problems. MGM darling turned tragic cautionary tale, noted a film historian who specialized in the studio system's treatment of female stars. She went from being the studio's reliable workhorse to being labeled unreliable and difficult, labels that ignored how the studio itself had created the conditions for her struggles. The pattern repeated throughout her remaining years. Concert promoters, television executives, and film producers would hire Garland for her extraordinary talent, then fire her when the addiction issues she couldn't control interfered with production. Each firing reinforced her insecurities, intensified her dependency, and further damaged her reputation. Fired from multiple studios, financially ruined despite global fame, the historian continued. By the 1960s, the same industry that had exploited her as a child was treating her as a liability. Her legal and tax problems had become so severe that she was essentially working to pay off debts rather than build security. In her final years, Garland's financial situation became dire. She was evicted from hotels for unpaid bills. Her performances became increasingly unreliable, sometimes brilliant, other times disastrous. At the time of her death from an accidental overdose in 1969, she was effectively bankrupt, despite having earned millions throughout her career. She died with less than $1,000 to her name, revealed her biographer, and owed hundreds of thousands in back taxes. The system used her up, addicted her, exploited her extraordinary talent, then discarded her when the damage they'd inflicted made her too unreliable. Garland's story represents the darkest aspects of the studio system, how it could identify extraordinary talent, elevate it to global fame, while simultaneously destroying the human being behind the talent through exploitation and chemical management. While her destruction came through institutional abuse, our next subject's downfall began with a single, devastating moment that transformed a promising career into a tragic spiral.
Yes, I do. I understand. I understand. He asked for it. The Army's gonna get you sooner or later, Fatso. But before they do, I want a piece of you myself.
Montgomery Clift, beauty destroyed, genius derailed. On May 12, 1956, Montgomery Clift left a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's home. Driving down a winding Los Angeles road, he crashed his car into a telephone pole, resulting in facial injuries that would permanently alter both his appearance and his career trajectory. "Hollywood watched a genius disappear in slow motion," remarked a director who worked with Clift both before and after the accident. "The crash was just the beginning of a decade-long collapse that transformed one of our most brilliant actors into a shell of himself." Prior to the accident, Clift had represented a new kind of male star, sensitive, vulnerable, emotionally complex, a stark contrast to the more stoic leading men who had dominated Hollywood. Films like Red River, A Place in the Sun, and From Here to Eternity had established him as not just a remarkable talent, but a new archetype of American masculinity on screen. The accident changed everything. Clift's face, once described as the most beautiful in cinema, was significantly altered despite pioneering plastic surgery. More devastatingly, the crash intensified his reliance on alcohol and painkillers, substances he had used before, but which now became essential crutches. "Brilliant actor, but spiraled after his near-fatal car crash," noted a film historian who studied Clift's career. "The physical changes were obvious, but the psychological impact was even more significant. He lost confidence in the instrument that had made him a star, himself." The visible changes in Clift's appearance created practical challenges for directors. His face now photographed differently on each side, requiring careful lighting and camera placement. More problematically, his behavior became increasingly erratic as his substance abuse intensified. "Disfigurement, addiction, and self-sabotage followed," explained the historian. "He would show up unprepared, forget lines, and sometimes appear visibly intoxicated on set. The consummate professional became increasingly unreliable." The industry's response was predictably callous. While a few loyal directors like Fred Zinnemann continued to work with Clift, recognizing his genius despite his struggles, many simply deemed him too risky for major investments. Insurance companies began requiring special bonds for productions featuring Clift, an additional cost that made studios hesitant to cast him. "Directors stopped calling, friends watched him unravel," said a costume designer who knew Clift in his final years. "It wasn't just that his appearance had changed, his entire essence seemed altered by a combination of pain, medication, alcohol, and the psychological trauma of watching his own decline." By the mid-1960s, Clift's career had dwindled to occasional supporting roles. His final film, The Defector, 1966, showed glimpses of his former brilliance, but was a far cry from the starring vehicles of his early career. On July 23, 1966, he died alone in his New York townhouse from a heart attack at age 45. The tragedy of Monty was that his genius remained intact, even as everything else fell apart, observed the director. "You could still see moments of the old magic in his later performances, brief windows where he'd break through the fog of addiction and pain, but those moments became increasingly rare." Clift's story represents how quickly fortune can reverse in Hollywood, how a single accident can transform a trajectory from ascent to decline. While his downfall began with an external catastrophe, our next subject's destruction came primarily from within, as personal demons gradually consumed one of Hollywood's most reliable leading men.
That's where the popcorn business comes in. You buy yourself a bag and plug up your...
Kid, I'll show you a step I learned in L.A. Now watch this. First, you gotta set the rhythm.
William Holden, the golden boy who lost his shine. In the 1950s, William Holden embodied Hollywood's ideal of rugged yet sophisticated masculinity. Films like Sunset Boulevard, Stalag 17, which won him an Academy Award, and The Bridge on the River Kwai established him as one of the industry's most bankable stars, handsome, talented, and professional. But beneath the